Welcome, welcome back to another episode of the Lightdrop podcast, where it is just two homies, as always, talking creativity and beyond. My name's Jamil.
And my name is Jeff. So what's up, Jamil? I know. Okay, so I'm gonna do the intro today because a little bit, just because we talked yesterday, and you said that you got some music to talk about, which is super exciting because we're always talking about art and as far as like VFX or graphic design, but I don't think a lot of our listeners know that Jamil is very musically gifted. So he's able to play the piano, I believe, right? Produce. Yes. Another Easter egg. Jamil and I were in a in a rap group for about 2 months, 3 months or something, freshman year at SCAD. So yeah, let us know what's been on your thoughts. Talk to us about your music.
Bro, that takes me back. The rap, I remember that. I always black that out until you remind me, and it's always you that reminds me.
Because I've been trying to find the song that we made, because I know there was Ruben put out a song on YouTube, but I don't know where it is. But I'd love to find, because we were like serious about it for
that doesn't need to be found. No. None of those, no footage from that time period needs to be found.
Yeah.
No, I was excited to tell you my experience from the other day, because I think it was one of our early episodes. We talked about enthusiasm and how to, like, the importance of downloading someone on your enthusiasm to transfer that to someone else about what you're working on, whatever project it is that you're working on. And so I got like this, I don't know, I'm going to piece together this experience that I had a couple days ago. Excuse me. And it might be like a mini rant. So give me like 5-10 minutes to just tell you about this zone I got in. And then I want to get your thoughts on it.
Yeah.
So I was a couple days ago. It was the evening time, and I was just compelled to listen to one of my old albums again. This album I came out with was when we were at SCAD. We were sophomores, I think. So 2013, I want to say, is when I came out with it. And then, of course, the songs that I wrote for it were like over the course of the 12, 18 months prior. And this album that I wrote was essentially an homage to the house that I grew up in. I titled the album 1OK, the first chapter, 1OK standing for one of a kind. You remember that was my like Twitter handle and stuff.
Yeah.
So when I was maybe 2 years old, maybe 3 at the oldest, my dad, so early 90s, mid 90s, my dad had one of those 90s tape recorders, right? With the actual physical cassette that you put in, and you gotta, you can hit record and record what's going on in the surroundings.
Yeah.
And there was this one afternoon that it was just him and I guess it must have been like a Saturday or a Sunday or something. And he just pressed record, and it was just him and I talking about whatever it was we were talking about. I'm 2 years old, and he's, what do you, what you doing? What you listen to? Like, and I'm blabbering, and the early 2000s came, I guess, and he was able to transfer it to digital somehow. I'm not sure how, but he kept it. He kept that recording. And so I took that and I essentially put music to it and kind of told that story of that afternoon over the course of the album. And then each of the songs that I wrote were written from the standpoint of like, okay, this is the house that I grew up in, and this is what I'm doing now, and like some of the things that I came away with, that I brought with to SCAD with me, like from my upbringing. Like
Yeah.
the there's songs that have whimsicalness. There's songs that have this aspect to where I'm trying to be cooler than I really am.
Yeah.
There's songs where there's like sentimental songs on there where I played piano like in tandem with my dad who played saxophone. There's songs on there where it's like I remember writing them from the standpoint of uh like the first feelings of love and all that,
Hmm.
with my from when I met who's now my wife. And so yeah, so a few days ago I was compelled to listen to it again. And I may do this, like I would say, over the past several years. I found that like usually like once a year I'll kind of do that. I'll just think about it and I'll listen to it again.
Hmm.
But each time I do, it's obviously a year later and I'm a year older. And so this time around it felt different because I became aware that it was like the 10-year anniversary, of
Yeah.
me having released this album. So,
At
I was only
19.
like,
Yeah, you were
yeah, I was only
19.
like 19, turning 20. And so this time I was listening to it as like I was listening to it almost as a fan, like
Hmm.
as a fan of myself at the time. And of course my musical ear has changed. I've gotten better at being able to, piece together music and stuff like that just through experience over the years. And so I'm listening to it and I'm like, oh man, I would have like I know for a fact at the time I thought it was perfect.
Hmm.
And I thought it was like, yeah, it can't get any better. But I'm listening to it in the back. I'm like, oh man, I'm getting kind of redundant here, or I could have changed this here, or like this note is kind of but I'm also just like, but it's fine because that's what it was at the time. Like that's where I was writing
Hmm.
it and everything. And so yeah, I literally sat down, I listened to this album, and when I say I listened to it, it was evening time, sat on the couch, headphones in, and I just kind of eyes closed and zoned out for like an hour.
Hmm.
And it was just crazy how it was like each each song I remembered exactly like where I was when I wrote it and what the headspace I was in when I wrote it, like
Yeah.
song 2 for example is this whimsical kind of silly playful song that I wrote. I remember I was in my room, the room that I grew up in, writing it, just like piecing it together and like playing around with different musical patterns and stuff like that. Um, you know, there was a song 5, I think it was, which is the sentimental song with my dad, on there. I'm playing that. I remember exactly where I was when we played that, and then there's this skit on the album, right, that I put on there. I was listening to that and it took me back to where that was. So there's this song on the album where I I recorded this experience I had in Philadelphia. It was in 2012, I want to say, December
Wait,
2012.
what's the name of that song so that I have a reference? The one that
It was 12th and Walnut,
12th
and
one.
it's like the
Okay.
skit.
Yeah.
And um December, yeah, I know it was December 2012 because it was when the Jordan 11 Bred 11s came out. So the black and red Jordan 11s, and I had to have them
Hmm.
because like,
Yeah.
bro, I needed them. I
Yeah.
had to have those shoes. And again, this was like, I think this was the last December I spent in the house that I grew up in, because again, this whole album was kind of like a nod to that house because when I released it, my parents had moved. So they moved when I was at SCAD. So it was
Hmm.
kind of like, okay, that's the first chapter of my life is kind of what that felt like. And so I recorded this situation where it was December 2012. I want to go get these shoes, and my cousin, he comes over because he also wants to get the shoes. His mom brings him to our house, and along with one of his friends, and we're gonna go to the Cherry Hill Mall, which is like 20 minutes outside of Philadelphia on the New Jersey side.
Hmm.
We're gonna stay there all night. We're gonna get in line and wait for these shoes to
Oof.
come out. So we get there at about like 10:30, 11 or so, and right when we do, there was all of these like mall. I don't think it were police officers. It was like mall security guards. We're just like, no, no, no. There's too many people here. Like, we're not gonna have all of you guys camping out for
Yeah.
these shoes. So they did something. I guess they had something prepared where they were like handing out tickets or whatever, and they were like, if you have one of these, you can come back in the morning and you'll have your like place kind of thing. But we didn't get one,
Oh.
and so it was like, okay, well, we still got to get these shoes. Like, what are we gonna do? So my cousin, who's from Philly, him and his friend, they're from Philly. They were like, okay, well, we can. I know a store in on Chestnut Street in Philly that should have a couple pairs. If we get there now,
Hmm.
then we could probably, get in and blah 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 blah. Mind you, this is like 11 at night, the night before.
Jeez.
So we drive over to Chestnut Street, get there at like midnight, and just park and sit in front of the store. Mind you, it's December, so it's cold. We don't
Oof.
have any, I'm only 18 years old.
Yeah.
My cousin's like 16. So we don't have any provisions. Like, we don't have, food,
Yeah.
gloves. Our gloves are probably all thin. So we're cold sitting in front of this store, midnight, waiting for it to open at 10 in the morning. And
Jeez.
around like 3 in the morning, this homeless guy walks past, and there were several of us, more people had showed up even at this time, all camped out in front of the store. And he was like, "What are y'all doing? Like, like, why are y'all out here?"
Hmm.
Right? Mind you, he's, a homeless man, so he's kind of like, "Well, y'all are choosing to do this kind of thing."
Hmm.
But we were having this banter back and forth with him. He's like, "Oh yeah, we're waiting for these shoes, blah blah blah." And he leaves, and time passes. It's probably like 8 in the morning by this time, 8:30, quarter to 9. So rush hour, people coming to work, like the streets getting busy for the morning, right? And we're all still in line waiting for these shoes. And the homeless guy comes back and he starts just like talking with us, talking with all of us, chatting shit kind of thing.
Hmm.
And it was by now more people came up. My cousin, he texted more of his friends telling them what we were doing, where we were at. So there's like 7 of us now waiting in line for these shoes, along with everyone else who is. And we're all standing in line, and I remember it was this, I guess it was like a Mercedes Benz pulled up to the curb right in front of where we were staying. But this Benz was like, it was like a restored model from, I don't know, it had to have been the 60s or
Classic.
something like that.
Yeah.
It was a classic, but it was like, it looked like a boat on wheels.
Huh.
And again, middle of December, it had a convertible. So the driver was he was in a convertible. He had this mink hat on,
Mm.
this mink like jacket. Like, he was, I've never seen a flex like that
Wow.
since.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, he pulled up like smooth with with the mink hat and everything. And he was just sitting in front of the shoe store for like, 5, 6 minutes, just kind of like, y'all keep waiting kind of thing
Yeah.
before he
Oh.
pulled off in the Mercedes. And so after he pulled off in that Mercedes, looking like he was looking, he looked like Frank Lucas from
American,
American Gangster,
American Gangster.
Denzel.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, After he pulled off, I pulled out my phone and I started recording, because the homeless guy was like, he was like, "Yo, like, y'all young boys, y'all don't understand what he was just driving. That was a model, blah blah blah, from the 50s. Like, his jacket, that wasn't no rabbit. That was probably like, it cost him the price of 5 of these shoes just to clean his hat." And he's just
Yeah.
like, and
Yeah.
we're all just like, yeah, 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 cool, but whatever. kind of thing. And I recorded that whole interaction.
Um,
Still have it on my phone
mhm.
to this day. And so I put music to it, and it's a song on the album again as just this like memory. Every time I listen to it, it just takes me right back to that whole story. How cold I was out there waiting for those shoes. I think I didn't get the shoes, by the way,
Oh
from
man, I was about to ask. Oh no.
we didn't even get the shoes, but I did get the flu
Oh
because I was out there so cold.
yeah.
and and I remember all of it, right? Just
Mhm,
from that skit. I put the music to it. Um, again, the song, a couple more songs go by, and I'm listening to the song that I wrote after my first like official date with who's now my wife.
mhm,
And it was just I could hear like all of the undertones of like those initial feelings of falling in love and feeling all of that. Like I remember I was sitting in my dorm room when I wrote it. I remember exactly where I was.
mhm.
And so it's just this whole journey that I went on that I of course, like I mentioned, I listened to the album over the years before, but this time it just felt like different. It was like I was a fan of myself. Like it was an instant classic. even if
Yeah,
no one even if no one ever listens to it, right? It's like it was so cool to have this thing that I made that I'm still enjoying 10 years later as just a fan of the music, and then understanding the story of each of the songs only amplified it for me. So
mhm,
I just wanted to like circle back with you to like just reiterate that that enthusiasm and that storytelling that is so important when you understand the what went into the work. It amplifies it so much.
yeah,
And I experienced that even though it was with my own work. Is just like, yo, like that's what it's about. It's about conveying that story to other people, getting people to understand what they're really listening to, not just, oh, this sounds cool, but when you understand, oh, this was the story behind it. This was why I wrote it this way. This was why I wrote it that way. It takes you right there,
yeah.
you know. And so, yeah, I
Nah,
just
man.
wanted to get your thoughts
Yeah,
on
no,
that.
I love that. I love knowing all this about it because I was there for part of that. So because I always knew that you're obviously into music, you know how to play music. Um, and I'll say three things. So the thing that I love about this story is that it's been 10 years since you'd made this album, so you're kind of reconnecting with it. Second thing I love was the meaning, the memories that you're able to connect with just by listening to this song, this album. Sorry, all where you were at that time. It sounds like it was a very, it was something that helped like fill your soul. Kind of, you put your soul onto paper, recorded it, and now you're able to revisit it, and it's just for you. The third thing I want to say that I've been thinking about a lot, that we as we accumulate these things that inspire us, it's always good, I believe, or not, I believe that um, it's always a good idea to reconnect with these things, right? It's to revisit them because otherwise, it's like, how do you know the new things that you're kind of coming across inspire you the same way? For me, I've been trying to rewatch movies that inspired me, that reconnect me to who I am and what I like about art. Like I have this giant poster behind me of this movie that I love, and I think I just need to be revisiting it more because I don't do what you did, which is like looking at past work a lot or just remembering stuff that I really, really enjoyed, especially if I created it. Um, I think that's a very special thing. I think that's almost like, it's like it's such a deep fulfillment to be able to enjoy something like that. So no, it's super inspiring that you got to do that, man. I really want to. I need to find something that I created when I was younger, because I know there was a bunch of stuff from SCAD that I don't think I've opened up, just because, people, you still have that anxiety of looking at like past work. Um, you, like you have to present it the next day or something. Um, but no,
And then
that's
you look at it and you're like,
uh,
man, I really thought
this was
that
gonna
this
be,
was it.
yeah. You're like, this
You
is
know?
as good as I'll ever be, and you're like, oh well.
Yeah.
Then you look back and you're like, wow, I've gotten so much better. Like you were talking about,
Mhm.
you've developed your ears so much better, but having that appreciation of just being like, this was it at the time. Like this was my best self, um, and being courteous with yourself in that way. So no, I love that story, man. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, man. It was like I said, I was excited to tell you because like I was surprised at how excited I got
Yeah,
again listening to it. Just like, oh man, like I was like, oh, that was a good song because I knew where I was at when I wrote it. And then it was like,
yeah,
I listened to the next one. I'm like, oh man, that was, you know, like I put like the song order, right? The track list order was deliberate too. So like how they transitioned into the next song, I was like, oh man, yeah, I still feel like that was a great decision that I made. I was like, yeah, that was nice,
yeah.
kind of thing.
I gotta,
Um,
I gotta ask. So, okay, so the prelude, that was you talking, the Jamil.
yeah, the
Okay,
whole, all of the like blabbering of
yeah.
2-year old blabbering, and then the other voice is my dad
Uh,
is like weaving throughout the album. So as the songs transition to the next songs and to the next songs, it's kind of like now we're in this part of the house, and then now we're talking about this in this part of the house, and we're just you know just hanging out kind of thing.
yeah,
But then meanwhile the songs are representing like these moments in my life as I grew up from those experiences from growing up in that house. um and it kind of weaves together and through through the album.
yeah. No, that's amazing, because, like we talked about, revisiting that that part of you, it's so important, because unless you have something like that to sort of realign yourself, you kind of get lost. You kind of forget, because there's just so much noise out in the world, and having something like this, some, whether it's music, art, a location somewhere, food, whatever it is that takes you back. For me, I have, I absolutely think that the one thing that always makes me happy is, so in Kenya we have this flatbread. It's very basic. It's just flour, salt, and water, and it's pan fried. But it's probably the best thing that I would like. I would eat it every single day, just because every time there was a celebration in Kenya, that's what you're eating. It's called chapo, chapati. Very plain, but you eat it with like meat, pretty much anything. It's kind of like a tortilla. But I really want to learn how to make it, because, being in the United States, there's not a lot of opportunities, um, for me to really talk with people who, I mean, there are, obviously, there's a bunch of Kenyans here, but, um, just giving myself that ability to reconnect with
Yeah,
a very,
to
very
do it
interesting,
yourself.
yeah, part of my life. I think that would be very special, because I feel like it's very easy to get lost, kind of lose
Yeah,
yourself.
and I think it's like your memories of that probably are from when you were start from when you were young and everything too. And
Yeah.
it's like when I was listening to this back, it was kind of this thing where I was like, why can't I, why haven't I made something, like what's keeping me from making something else, like again, kind of thing.
Hmm.
Um, and then also like I just became aware of like how free I felt, even though even at the time I was, we're always stressing ourselves out about whatever it is we're stressing ourselves out about at the time. Then it was it was classes, you know,
Hmm.
and and you know grades and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm looking back to it, I'm like, man, I hadn't like I was I had nothing but time and
Yeah.
just creative. Like that was my job, was to just make stuff, be creative. Like that was this period of time when you're in college where you know you have the ability to just do that
Hmm.
with and not have to worry about bills and rent
Yeah.
and getting your car fixed and work and all this stuff that piles up to where gradually over time you feel like you don't have time to go back and make any of those things. So that was the other thing, listening to it, it was just like, I just remember how satisfying it was to just be able to just get all of it out, get all of it out, get all of it out, make it. um and so it's like, man, I need to, there's the only thing keeping me from doing that now is just me telling myself that it's harder or that I can't. But the
Yeah.
fact of the matter is, it's like, no, you can, you know when you listen to it back and you see how excited it made you, it's like, man, I can make something now that in another 5-10 years it'll be
Yeah.
the same thing, where it's like, and that's kind of like what you're thinking about, is
Yeah.
that the story that you're telling, that if you can be your own fan, like genuinely be your own fan when you look back at your work, then that's the one of the most satisfying places to be.
Yeah.
And you
And
take yeah.
I was gonna say, from thinking about it in the sense of like memories, and people, everybody, at least me growing up, we would always keep like this photo book, um, pictures you just scroll through. But from like thinking about it from the lens that you kind of explained, you put down your memories onto paper, recorded an album, and that was something that you felt like was worth recording. So I just think about it like, whatever people are experiencing right now, what you're going through, is it worth remembering? Whether it's the good or the bad things, then that's worth creating for. So in the next few years, you can reflect on it, and you'll probably enjoy it, a little bit, just because you'll be like, well, I've grown from here to here, and it just gives you, I don't know, it's kind of like something that's just for you, which, I don't know, it sounds really nice to be able to say that you did that for yourself.
Yeah, to capture that moment as a piece of art.
Yeah.
Like last episode we were talking about treating everything like it's a work of art.
Hmm.
you know Going to work, getting up, and how you present yourself, how you dress. um you know if you have a business, if you look at yourself, freelancer, contractor, as a business, right? Everything is this work of art. And so, same thing with your emotions, your feelings,
Hmm.
your body that you're living in, that your brain in between your skull, like, it's
Yeah.
all this work of art. And so as you're feeling emotions, whether they're positive or negative, it's like, oh man, let me capture this. All right, like,
Yeah.
let me, like, essentially, like, put this in a bottle that I can show someone whenever I want to, and let someone experience it the same way I experienced it, or interpret it different. But um, I'm gonna do it as food. I'm gonna do it as music. I'm gonna do it as drawing.
Hmm.
You're capturing that moment. You're capturing that emotion, so that it's essentially cemented in time. And if you can do it in such a way that even yourself can look back on it as a fan, as someone who gets excited about, oh man, I was going through this at the time, I was going through that at the time, but I made this, and this was nice.
Yeah.
Like, that's really satisfying. So that was my experience, is to just reiterate that. It's like, it was very nice to be able to revisit yourself,
Yeah.
in that way. But you gotta make stuff. You gotta do stuff.
Gotta
You
do
know.
stuff. Yeah. You can look back on instead of kind of passively going on about it. Um, you can be involved in your own story, and what you're going through, what you're experiencing is worth remembering, worth reflecting on. Whether it's sometimes I'll think to myself, I'll be like, well, I'm waiting for a certain thing to happen for me to start recording something. Obviously, it's great that we have this podcast because now we're kind of forced to to record our thoughts and our feelings. But personally, like it's something that I don't think I've really dove into. I don't make music. I don't paint. Most of the things I make are digital. I don't sketch as much. But really going back and thinking about it, those are probably whenever I look back at my sketchbooks, even the bad ones, the ones that are bad, um, I'm still super proud because I can see like I was really trying to learn something, and even though you know no one ever sees them, it's almost like writing a love letter to yourself because you're saying like in the future you're worth speaking to, like that person who was there 10 years ago or whatever, was worth speaking to, and that's what I believe it means to record these thoughts, these emotions, um, and being able
One
to
thing that
transfer
make
it. Right? Oh, sorry. What
Yeah.
did you say?
No, I was saying one thing that makes me wonder and think of is, well, you mentioned kind of like revisiting things,
Mm,
like movies and stuff that you enjoyed, or shows and things like that. I started it wasn't even really till recently, I would say, that I started doing that with books. Like I've never been one to like mark up a book while
hmm
I'm reading it, put like highlights and post-it notes and stuff like that. That's never kind of been my thing. Like I'll read it, and if I like it, then it's like I'll say to myself, I read it. I read that book
Yeah.
already. Um, it wasn't until recently that I started kind of treating that differently, and kind of revisiting things, and it made me wonder, or maybe think like when we do revisit something, is it even really revisiting it, or are we just continuing to read it? You know what I mean?
Mm,
Like like I read something where it kind of mentioned how like there's so much knowledge out there in art and books especially, that when you find something that you really like you really should study it. It's not
mm,
enough to just read it. Like your mindset should be to study this book. And so if that's where you are, and you finish it and you put it down, and then you pick it back up a couple months later because you remembered something and you want to go back and study it again, like I guess technically could you call that revisiting it, or would you just say that the whole time you've just been absorbing it, processing it, and now continuing you're continuing it and
hmm
refining it, and and stuff like that. So it's like, did I finish the book, or am I just am I just kind of putting it down for now, absorbing it, and then coming back and picking it back up again? Maybe not. Maybe I'm just reading the book three times, right?
Yeah.
But it just made me think of that.
No, that's I believe that's absolutely true. I believe that there there's no reason to pick up a new book or um, to constantly tell yourself that I need to get a new book every few months or something to
Mm,
stay ahead. Because yeah, like you said, you can study a book, you can study art and dive deep into it. Because every time you look into it, you're kind of getting this new perspective. Um, Maybe yesterday was different, and today I'm a new person. I'm a little bit different, so I interpret this book a little bit differently. And if it's a good book, it's a good book. Like one of my favorite books is the autobiography of Frederick Douglass. Um, and it's just every time it's such a small book, obviously, but it always reminds me how important education is to me. And it's one of those books that I try to revisit. My goal is to at least read it like once a year, just because it's such a important book to me. But no, I 100% agree. Books should be reread, not put away forever, and then especially good
Yeah,
ones. You know.
yeah. And I don't think I've only the only fiction book I've ever done that with has been The Alchemist. I
Mm,
read that twice. I read that and I reread that a couple of years later. But I think about that for like movies, for example. There's of course been things that kind of come on TV or something on Netflix. You're like, oh, I'll watch that again. Like that
yeah.
was funny. That was entertaining. But if I really think about doing that with movies, where I'm like, that was good, and I want to watch that again and really pay attention to like the nuances and like try and study. Like,
Hmm.
like I watched it already. I enjoyed the film. Now I want to watch it again and see this. So I'm not a huge film person, but the only film that made me want to do that is Interstellar.
Ah,
Um,
yes.
that's the only film that I ever was like, I want to watch that back and study it and really kind of see what they did, both from the visual effects perspective, because at the time I remember it was the practical effects that they used were kind of a topic of discussion when that movie first came out.
Hmm.
But then also, of course, the cinematography and the storytelling and the clues that they left, in the beginning of the movie that kind of came together at the end. It was like that was the only time I ever did that. And then, now it's got me wondering, especially after this experience with my own work.
Hmm.
It's like what else is out there that maybe I've watched it or I've read it and I enjoyed it, but then I just by habit, I just figured, oh, it's I did it already.
Yeah.
Why would I go back and watch it when you know maybe we don't give ourselves the opportunity that we should to really dive deeper into something to be like, oh man, I liked that the first time, but now I really understand why it was this, and then you can translate that even better to your own work, to your own experiences, to the way you talk about stuff.
Yeah.
Um, you know,
No. I think that's a good way to close off this episode. Um, Giving us, I believe that like inspiration is inspiration regardless of whether it's new or old.
Mm.
And I've been trying to think of inspiration as something that I can feel more than I see. I guess when I see something, do I feel something when I'm, you know, consuming it, whether it's like eating or watching something, and being able to take that and stay with it, stay with that feeling for a little bit longer instead of just throwing it away is something that I believe I'm looking forward to like developing, whether it's, rereading new books, listening to albums. I want to listen to J. Cole's album. I remember when it came out, Weird Scad, and not
Mm.
album, sorry, mixtape. Was it? I think it was Friday Night Lights when that came out. But stuff like that.
Yeah, it came out.
Even
It either came out like our freshman year or right before our
yeah,
freshman year.
but just stuff like that just will take us back. Even like the Tuna Roll song when we played basketball. All these things, right, that have played such a huge part in my life. Um, it's becoming more and more incredibly important for me to be able to tap in to
Yeah, it's
what I
almost
enjoyed
like
about those things, right?
when you're inspired by something, um, it's almost like your subconscious is saying that, like dive into this a little bit more,
Yeah.
like really kind of, like you say, whether it's food, you eat something, you're like, oh man, I've been inspired to explore this cuisine more, because
Hmm.
I've lived down the street from an Indian restaurant for all these years, and this is my first time, and I didn't realize it was. So now I'm like, oh man, right? Maybe if that was your experience, it's like don't write that off when you have that just feeling, like you said. It's not this thing that you saw that you were tangibly able to say, oh yeah, that was good and I
Yeah.
enjoyed that. But like when you actually have that feeling of inspiration, like what was it about like that was really good,
Yeah.
let me go back and watch it again, and
Yeah.
try and watch it from another perspective, or let me read it again. And it's worth, maybe just allowing yourself to do that.
Yeah. That's space. But yeah, I think that's the pod, y'all.
Is that the pod?
That's the pod. Another one.
I was sitting outside in the backyard, and I saw a fly land on the table next to me, but he got like pretty close. Like
Hmm.
usually you get close to a fly and they like fly away. He got like pretty close. So I was looking at him and
Hmm.
I saw his little hands like going
Hmm.
like this. I thought what you said. But then I was like, bro, like I could see his details close enough. I could see the eyes, like, and all that. I was like, bro, I swear flies look like spaceships. Like they look like they're
Yeah.
controlled by something else.
Yeah.
I swear they come from another dimension or something. Cause you know how like you just have a fly in your house, and then you have like four, and it's like where they come from?
Yeah. How
I
they
swear they
very
come from another dimension, bro.
they're pretty cool. Their eyes, like I've seen like micro shots of their eyes. It's very cool. It's like it's got this
Mhm.
like a gradient throughout the whole thing, and obviously it's like small little hexagons that make up their eyes. And they can see pretty well. I mean, I think they're elite as far as insects.
That's what I'm saying, bro. I think flies. I don't. They gotta be like machines or something, like little tiny people in there, just from different dimensions, just clocking you, just like
Just
watching you.
right, the CIA or probably
Yeah,
aliens.
that expression is a fly on the wall.
Yeah, no,
I bet you that's what it is. Secret agents.
you never know, bro.